Hello everyone, my name is Bill. I just wanted to quickly show you how to use a lens flare rig that I built. I built it with this scene in mind, this Earth, kind of cocked over on its side, and you can see that the sun is kind of glaring in from here to here. It looks pretty good on its own, but to really sell the image, we could use a lens flare. Imagine the sun is just out of frame up here and kind of glaring down this way. In order to make that work, I decided to go ahead and build a rig. While Blender's compositing nodes are pretty good, especially the glare nodes, etc., they have to have an existing pixels to work with. And if your sun is just out of frame, you really don't have any pixels to work with. So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to come into our scene and we're going to append the rig. Append, we're going to find our lens flare file. We're going to come into scene and we're going to go to lens flare. Let's go ahead and link it in. Now, we'll go to our node editor, and as you can see here, we have all of the nodes that made this scene possible. It's really not terribly complex. And we're going to add in a node group that we got from our lens flare scene. You'll see we have that scene right there. I'm going to go to add group lens flare ng, and ng just stands for node group, and I'm going to drop it right onto the viewer. Now you'll notice here you've got this underlying image or render layer, and that's this default backdrop, and then we've got this flare geometry. Now we're going to get that also as a part of the scene. We're going to add render layers. We're going to go to the lens flare scene, and we're just going to drag and drop that over onto there. Now we still don't have the lens flare, as you can see, and there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, I'm going to go to the 3D view so you can see what the lens flare actually looks like. Okay, there it is from camera perspective. If I were to look at it from the side, you can see that we've got just a few elements here. Here we have our imaginary sun. We have some rays for it to cast off. We've got this back glaring disk thing, and we have some hexagonal elements here. All of them are tied to this string of vertices. It's just an edge. It won't render. And when you move it around by just rotating it along this controls axes, the X and the Z. If you look here in this lens flare scene in your outliner, you'll see you've got the hex lens flare control. And I also have a circular one. It's actually hiding on layer 1. Here's the circular one, and it's just flat. It's ready for you to create your own pose with. The one I was using is this hex one, which we already have set to look kind of cool, but it's not quite perfect yet. We're going to move it along the x-axis and rotate it just a little bit along the z. And since I want these bottom flare elements to be kind of kissing the bottom of the frame, I'm going to go ahead and scale this thing along its local y-axis by hitting Y twice, and that'll bring those out. Now these elements are vertex parented to this edge and will keep their elements orthogonal with the camera, and that's an important thing to note, in that you don't want a flare element to appear like it's skewed against the camera. It won't look right. So we're going to go back to now we've got this positioned, we're going to go back to our Earth scene. We'll go into our nodes, and we still don't have this flare because we haven't rendered the node elements. Now this is actually a full render of the Earth scene. I'm just kind of adding in my own compositing layers here. So it's going to render the lens flare elements all by themselves. It's not going to re-render your entire Earth scene. If it did, this particular scene takes about an hour and a half on my computer to render. And once it's done with its render, it's going to go through the compositing stage. Now it didn't pop up here because I haven't actually tied it in yet to the composite output, only to the viewer output. I'll drag this composite over, connect it up so we'll be able to see it there as well, and we'll wait for this compositing step to finish. It should just take a few seconds. And there you go. You can see we can move this around. I'm holding down Alt and middle mouse button to move the backdrop around. And if I flip over to our UV image editor, you can see here it is fully done. And there's a few minor controls that we have on the node group itself. If I flip back to the node editor, the flare brightness control and the glow brightness control. The flare brightness controls the brightness of the individual elements. The glare brightness is the brightness of the glare. Go fig. So if we wanted to brighten these up right now, they are set, I think, to 0.6 and 1. So if we really wanted to play with that, we could say bring our flare brightness all the way up to say 1.2 and our glow brightness up to say 1.7 or so, and let those composite. It's compositing. I'm just going to reposition in these nodes so that they're kind of out of the way. And there we go. You can see these brightened up, so you can really just play with those to your heart's content. Now that's not the only way to use this flare rig. You can also open up the rig itself. See, I've got some nodes for you here, but by default, if you go over to its node editor, you'll see I've got an image input. If all you want to do is add the lens flare nodes onto this image, there you go. You just load up your previous render into this image editor, or this image input, and it overlays them, lets you do whatever you need to with it. And there you have it. That's how you use the lens flare rig for cycles.